name of the game is not to make everybody spin at 250. The name of the game is to keep them spinning at the speeds they need to spin at and not bounce off each other, rather become linked, aligned, and integrated.
George Labovitz, unleashing the power of organizational alignment.
What alignment really is doing, ultimately, is creating a new environment. And what will happen over time, and at the very end today, I'm going to show you some examples from companies that have achieved it. Hard to stay there. Some of them have drifted. But when they achieve it, they outperform their competitors by every major financial measure.
George Labovitz is the founder of Organizational Dynamics, which has been named one of Inc. magazine's 500 fastest growing companies twice. As the president of ODI, George has 30 years of experience consulting with world-class companies to help them unlock the power of organizational alignment.
You know, a few years ago, somebody sent me an article written by a psychologist, actually a psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist said, if you want to understand organizations, think of them as families. Now, I'm a psychologist by trade, so it made sense to me. And the guy went on to write, all organizations, like a family, has a father, should have a father. And the fathers personify what the organization does. In a sales organization, it's the salespeople. They're the fighter pilots. They're the ones that are out there driving the business. In a hospital, it's the docs. In the Air Force, it's the pilots. You can identify the fathers very easily. You can kind of stereotype them. They're focused, they're driven, and you'll be right most of the time. So that made a lot of sense to me. He went on to say all organizations, like a family, have children. And the children, he said, are the employees. Now, I stopped when I read that. 200 people work with me in my company. They're not children, they're professionals and so on. But then he went on to write, sometimes, he said, like children, they need to be nurtured, they need to be cared for, they need to be trained. So I backed off and said, okay. Then he went on to say, and sometimes, like children, they throw tantrums. And I thought, yeah. So I finally bought in. Finally, he said, like a family, all organizations need a mother. And when you really boil it down, in most families, it is the mother that's really concerned about nurturing and training and moving the family resources around. And that role in an organization is management's role. That's what we do. And that made the most sense of all. I'm here to talk to you about management. So I'm delighted to have the opportunity to talk to you mothers about what we do that contributes to organizational integration and therefore organizational performance in our management role. If you have a strategy that is appropriate, that's future-oriented, that's customer-oriented, that understands the competitive situation of your business, if you have that kind of strategy and you are able to link it to people who are ready, people who are motivated, people who are skilled, people who are trained, if you can link it, you will gain not just vertical alignment. What vertical alignment equals is strategic excellence. You will outperform. In the book, there's a utility company that had 34 years of growth and profit, and the chairman told me they view their ability to suck the strategy down and deploy it across their company as a strategic advantage. They feel that they're in 34 states, and he feels that none of his competition can touch them because they're worried. That industry is totally worried now about competition. If you are able to understand your customers' requirements before they are able to articulate those requirements, think about that. If you can anticipate before they tell you, that's total customer focus. Tom Lako gave me an example of Procter & Gamble. Their absolute focus on the customer and understanding their own processes and technology allowed them to develop Pampers. You know that no woman ever, or guy, ever called Procter & Gamble and said, can you guys make a disposable diaper? Never did that. Understanding the market, understanding their technological competence, anticipating, they built Pampers. And for 2 years, were the only manufacturer of disposable diapers in the world.
An An award-winning professor of management at Boston University, George Labovitz is the author of the best-selling book, The Power of Alignment. He also co-authored the 1993 bestseller, Making Quality Work. His articles appear in numerous distinguished publications, including the Wall Street Journal and Fortune magazine.
But the idea is, what are the critical success factors of the business? Management comes together, identifies what's the main thing, what's important. Through that, what are the critical success factors of the business? Where we've been working, although we're on hold right now, with a bank in Malaysia. 243rd largest bank in the world. The old man wants to get into the top 100. Okay, that's the main thing. What are the critical success factors? What are you going to have to do differently to do that? What are the stretch goals and objectives in each one of those areas? This is the beginning of a balanced scorecard. 3 or 4 critical things. One of them ought to be a people thing. One of them ought to be a customer thing. One of them definitely should be a profit thing. And one of them, if you buy the balanced scorecard argument, ought to be an innovation thing as well. You lay them all out here, lay the goals. What are the activities and tactics, measures and targets, and what are the critical business systems we're going to have to alter and change before we move ahead? Now you get it. If you're able to do this and deploy it properly, you are vertically aligned.
In 1979, George Labovitz received Boston University's Metcalf Cup and Prize, awarded to the most outstanding teacher from among the 2,500 member faculty. He holds advanced degrees from Boston College and the Ohio State University, and served in the United States Air Force as a pilot and aircraft commander with the rank of captain. He draws on all of these experiences to reveal the power of organizational alignment.
Alignment is an unnatural act. It doesn't come easy, and one doesn't stay in alignment unless you're constantly sensitive to leading indicators of your enterprise, your department, your team, your group, your department, division, or your company. And a good example of that, if you look around and think about your own organization right now, it's composed of levels, it's composed of functions, it's composed of divisions. In other words, people are made different from each other by virtue of organizational design. Well, I'm a psychologist by trade, and I've always been intrigued with the fact that when you make people different from each other, whether they be corporate versus the field, or tall versus short, or marketing versus engineering, or whatever, people do not just stay different from each other. There's something that kicks in that goes beyond psychology to instinct. People who are not like us become negative, hostile, different from us. And so we used an expression when I was in the Air Force. I flew airplanes on the line, and then we had squadrons, and then we had wings. I can tell you that pilots on the line did not refer to the people up at wing as our colleagues and good friends and bosses up at wing. In fact, we used to say those bastards up at wing. We had songs about those people, which I could not repeat right now. When I look back on it, on my military experience, and realize we had more to complain about with them than we did the enemy half the time. That dynamic goes on in organizations all the time. So the real problem of alignment is overcoming the basic tendencies of organizations to want to fly apart.
George Labovitz, Unleashing the Power of Alignment. For more information on George Labovitz, contact leading authorities.